The blazing Arizona sun beat down mercilessly as Fiona James stood outside Peterson's diner with hunger gnawing at her stomach and humiliation burning her cheeks. The words of the owner still rang in her ears. "We don't serve your kind here." All because she was traveling alone, a woman without a husband, which apparently made her suspicious in this dusty little town of Copper Springs in 1885. Fiona wiped away a tear of frustration, careful not to smudge the little makeup she wore. At 23, she had traveled west after her father's death, determined to claim the land he had purchased years before. The journey had been grueling, but nothing had prepared her for the coldness of the townsfolk. "Mighty hot to be standing out here, madam," came a deep voice from behind her. Fiona turned to see a tall man dismounting from a chestnut stallion. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out kind eyes and a strong jaw dusted with stubble. His clothes were trail-worn but clean denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. A gun hung at his hip, but he carried himself with an easy confidence that didn't seem threatening. "I wasn't given much choice," Fiona replied, lifting her chin despite her exhaustion. The man tied his horse to the hitching post and approached, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. His hair was the color of wheat, and those eyes now visible in full were a striking blue that reminded her of the summer sky back home in Boston. "Ethan Blackwell," he said, extending his hand. "Might I ask what the trouble is?" Fiona hesitated before taking his hand. "Fiona James, Mr. Peterson doesn't approve of unaccompanied women in his establishment." Ethan's brow furrowed as he glanced at the diner. "That's so? Well, Miss James, I reckon we ought to do something about that." He replaced his hat and offered her his arm. "Would you permit me to accompany you inside?" Something about his straightforward manner made her trust him, despite her usual caution around strangers, especially men in this wild territory. "I would appreciate that, Mr. Blackwell." Together, they walked into Peterson's diner. The bell above the door announced their arrival, and the buzz of conversation dimmed as heads turned to look at them. The owner, a portly man with small, suspicious eyes, immediately approached with a scowl. "I told her we're not serving 2 coffees and whatever you've got hot on the stove," Ethan interrupted, his voice pleasant but firm as he pulled out a chair for Fiona at an empty table. "Miss James is with me." Peterson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water before he huffed and retreated to the kitchen. Ethan sat down across from her, his back to the wall, giving him a view of the entire room, a habit, Fiona guessed, of a man who'd spent time watching his back. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwell." "That was kind of you." "Ethan, please," he said with a slight smile that transformed his weathered face. "And it's not kindness, Miss James. It's common decency, something that seems in short supply around here." "Fiona," she corrected, finding herself smiling back. "And I'm afraid common decency hasn't been my frequent companion since arriving out west. What brings a lady like yourself to Copper Springs? It's hardly Paris." Fiona laughed softly. "My father owned land near here. He passed away 3 months ago, and I've come to claim my inheritance." Ethan's eyes showed genuine sympathy. "My condolences. Which property?" "The old Wilkinson place, about 10 miles north." "Do you know it?" Recognition flickered across his face. "I do. It's good land, but it's been sitting empty for years. You planning to work it yourself?" Before she could answer, Peterson returned with 2 mugs of coffee and plates of beef stew. He set them down without a word and quickly retreated. "I intend to try," Fiona said, picking up her spoon. The warm food was heavenly after days of hard travel and meager provisions. "My father taught me about farming before he moved east. I may be from Boston, but I know the difference between wheat and barley." "A city girl with farming knowledge," Ethan said, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "That's not something you see every day." "And what about you, Ethan?" "What's your story?" His smile faded slightly. "I ranch a small spread about 5 miles west of your property. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Served with the Union Army, then came west looking for something that was my own." He took a sip of coffee. "Been here 8 years now." As they ate, Fiona found herself relaxing in his company. Ethan told her about Copper Springs, which families were trustworthy, which merchants were fair, and which to avoid. He spoke with a straightforwardness that she found refreshing after the deceptions of Boston society. "How are you getting out to your property?" Ethan asked as they finished their meal. "I hired a wagon in town, but the driver refuses to leave until tomorrow morning, something about not wanting to be on the road after dark." Ethan nodded. Smart man. "The road gets tricky after sunset, and there have been reports of bandits." He seemed to consider something before continuing. "I could escort you if you'd like. I'm headed back that way anyhow." Fiona studied him. Everything she'd been taught warned against trusting strangers, especially in this untamed territory. But there was something solid about Ethan Blackwell, a steadiness that made her feel safe. "I would be grateful for the company," she finally said. Ethan paid for their meals despite her protests and walked with her to where her trunks were stored at the general store. The proprietor, a thin man named Jenkins, eyed them suspiciously. "Mr. Jenkins, I'll be escorting Miss James to her property today instead of waiting for tomorrow's wagon," Ethan explained. Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. "That's fine by me, Blackwell, but she still owes for the storage of her things." Fiona reached for her purse, but Ethan was already counting out coins. "Consider it settled," he said firmly. Outside, as they loaded her trunks onto his wagon, Fiona protested. "You must let me repay you." "No need," Ethan said, securing the last trunk. "Consider it a welcome to the territory. Besides, neighbors should look out for each other." The journey to her property took just over 2 hours. As they traveled, Ethan pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area. Fiona found herself laughing more than she had in months, the weight of grief and worry momentarily lifting from her shoulders. The sun was beginning to set when they crested a hill, and there, below them, lay a small homestead. A modest cabin, a barn in need of repair, and fields that had gone wild with neglect stretched before them. "Home, sweet home," Ethan said, pulling the wagon to a stop. Fiona's heart sank a little at the sight of the dilapidated buildings. Her father had described a prosperous farm, but this was a ruin. "It's not what I expected," she admitted quietly. Ethan studied her face. "It's been abandoned for years, but the bones are good. The well is still sound and the soil is rich. With some work, it could be something again." They unloaded her trunks into the cabin, which was surprisingly intact despite its outward appearance. Ethan lit a lantern and built a fire in the stone hearth while Fiona took stock of her new home. "I'll bring you some fresh meat tomorrow," Ethan said as he prepared to leave. "And maybe some proper tools. That garden won't plant itself." Fiona walked him to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him go. The cabin felt very empty and the night very dark. "Thank you for everything today, Ethan. I don't know what I would have done without your help." He tipped his hat. "Get some rest, Fiona. Tomorrow's a new day." As she watched him ride away, Fiona felt a mixture of fear and hope. She was alone in a strange land, but for the first time since arriving, she felt like she might have found an ally. The next morning, Fiona awoke to the sound of hammering. She dressed quickly and stepped outside to find Ethan on her roof, replacing broken shingles. "Good morning," he called down. "Hope I didn't wake you too early. Thought I'd fix this before the next rain comes." "You didn't have to do that," Fiona said, shielding her eyes from the sun. "I know," he replied, climbing down. "But I wanted to. Brought some supplies, 2 flour, coffee, and some venison. Figure you could use a proper meal." Over the next few weeks, Ethan became a regular visitor. He helped her repair the barn, showed her how to mend fences, and taught her about the local plants and animals. In return, Fiona cooked for him and shared stories of her life in Boston. They fell into an easy friendship that brightened even the hardest days of work. One evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset, Ethan turned to her with a serious expression. "Town meeting tomorrow, you should come." Fiona hesitated, remembering her reception at the diner. "Are you sure that's wise?" "If you're going to live here, you need to be part of the community. Besides," he added with a grin, "you'll be with me." The next day, they rode into town together. The meeting was held in the small church, and Fiona could feel eyes on her as they entered. Some were curious, others openly hostile. Mayor Thompson, A thin man with spectacles perched on his nose called the meeting to order. The discussion ranged from water rights to the upcoming Harvest Festival, but tension rose when the topic of land came up. "There's the matter of the Wilkinson property," Thompson said, glancing at Fiona. "Miss James claims to have inherited it, but we have no proof of ownership." Fiona stood, heart pounding. "I have the deed right here, Mayor Thompson." She produced the document from her purse. "My father purchased this land legally 15 years ago." A man at the back of the room spoke up. "That land should go to someone who can work it properly. A woman alone can't handle a farm." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Ethan rose to his feet, his presence commanding attention. "Miss James has done more with that property in 3 weeks than anyone else has in years," he said firmly. "She's fixed the roof, cleared half the fields, and repaired the well. If that's not working it properly, I don't know what is." "And she's had help," another voice called out. "Your help, Blackwell. Neighbors help neighbors," Ethan replied evenly. "That's how we survive out here." Mayor Thompson examined the deed. "This appears to be in order, Miss James. The property is legally yours." The meeting continued, but the tension remained. Afterward, as they walked to their horses, Ethan was unusually quiet. "What's wrong?" Fiona asked. He sighed. "I'm sorry about that in there. People here can be set in their ways. It's not your fault. Besides, I'm getting used to it." "You shouldn't have to," he said, his voice hard. Then softer, "You're doing good work, Fiona. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." As spring turned to summer, the land began to respond to Fiona's care. The fields sprouted with wheat and corn, and a small vegetable garden provided fresh food. Ethan continued to visit, sometimes bringing supplies, other times just bringing himself and stories that made her laugh. One hot afternoon, as they worked side by side repairing a fence, Fiona noticed Ethan watching her. "What is it? Do I have dirt on my face?" "No," he said with a small smile. "I was just thinking that you belong here now. You've made this place come alive again." Fiona felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You would have found a way," he said confidently. "You're stronger than you know." That evening, as they shared a simple meal of rabbit stew and cornbread, a thunderstorm rolled in. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by booming thunder that made the cabin walls shake. "I should head back," Ethan said, rising reluctantly. Fiona glanced out the window at the pouring rain. "Don't be ridiculous. You'll drown before you reach your ranch. Stay until it passes." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "If you're sure." As the storm raged outside, they sat by the fire, talking late into the night. Fiona told him about her dreams for the farm, and Ethan shared stories of his time in the army and his journey west. "I never thought I'd find peace out here," he admitted, staring into the flames. "After the war, I couldn't settle anywhere, too many ghosts following me, but this land. It has a way of healing a person." "Is that why you helped me?" Fiona asked softly. "Because you know what it's like to need healing." Ethan's eyes met hers, and in them, she saw something that made her heart race. "I helped you because from the moment I saw you standing outside that diner, I knew you were something special, Fiona James." Before she could respond, a particularly loud crack of thunder shook the cabin, and the roof began to leak in one corner. They scrambled to place buckets under the drips, the moment broken. The storm continued through the night. Fiona insisted Ethan take the bed while she made a pallet by the fire. Neither slept much, both acutely aware of the other's presence in the small cabin. Morning brought clear skies and an awkward farewell. Ethan rode off with a promise to return in a few days, and Fiona was left with confusing feelings and a leaky roof to fix. The summer progressed, and with it, Fiona's confidence. She sold her first small harvest of early vegetables at the town market, earning both money and grudging respect from some of the townsfolk. Ethan was there, as always, helping to load her wagon and standing nearby as she conducted her business. Not everyone was welcoming, however. Harold Peterson, the diner owner, made a point of avoiding her stand, and several of the town women whispered behind their hands when she passed. "Just ignore them," Ethan advised as they walked back to her wagon after the market. "It's hard to ignore being treated like a pariah," Fiona replied. Give it time, they'll come around when they see you're here to stay. But time brought new challenges. August arrived with a heat wave that threatened crops throughout the territory. Fiona worked from dawn to dusk, hauling water to her struggling plants. Even with Ethan's help on his frequent visits, it was a losing battle against the relentless sun. One evening, exhausted and discouraged, Fiona collapsed onto her porch steps. Maybe they're right, she said when Ethan joined her. Maybe I can't do this alone. You're not alone, Ethan said firmly, taking her hand. The touch sent a jolt through her. And this isn't just your fight. Every farmer in the county is struggling right now. His confidence in her was unwavering, and in that moment, looking into his eyes, Fiona realized she had fallen in love with Ethan Blackwell. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The next day, disaster struck. Fiona was tending to her chickens when she smelled smoke. She ran to the edge of her property and saw flames licking at the dry grass of her western field, the field closest to town. Panic seized her as she ran for buckets. The fire was spreading rapidly, feeding on the parched vegetation. She fought desperately, but the flames moved too quickly. Suddenly, Ethan was there, leading a group of men from neighboring farms. They worked together, digging fire breaks and beating back the flames with wet blankets. Hours later, sweaty and smoke-stained, they finally subdued the fire. Half of Fiona's wheat crop was gone, but the cabin and barn had been spared. As the other men departed, Ethan stayed behind, his face grim. This wasn't an accident, he said quietly once they were alone. Fiona stared at him. What do you mean? The fire started at the edge of your property near the road. No lightning, no campfire, he hesitated. There's been talk in town about your friendship with me. Our friendship. What does that have to do with anything? Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Some people don't like that I've been helping you. They think I should have bought this land when it was available, not let it go to an outsider, especially a woman. So someone tried to burn me out. The idea was horrifying. I can't prove it, but yes, I think so. He took her hands. Fiona, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. No, she said firmly. This is the fault of whoever set that fire, not yours. Ethan stayed that night, sleeping on her porch with his rifle across his lap. Fiona barely slept, her mind racing with fear and anger. By morning, she had made a decision. I'm going to town, she announced over breakfast. I want to look these people in the eye. I'll go with you, Ethan said immediately. She shook her head. No, I need to do this alone. They need to see that I won't be intimidated. After a lengthy argument, Ethan reluctantly agreed, but insisted on riding into town with her and waiting at the livery stable. If you're not back in 2 hours, I'm coming looking for you, he warned. Fiona walked down the main street with her head held high, ignoring the stares. Her first stop was Mayor Thompson's office. Miss James, he greeted her, surprise evident in his voice. What can I do for you? Someone tried to burn me out yesterday, she said without preamble. I want to know what you intend to do about it. The mayor's face paled. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof? The fire started at the edge of my property near the road. It wasn't an accident. Thompson sighed. I'm sorry that happened, Miss James, but without proof, there's little I can do. Then I'll find the proof myself, she said, turning to leave. Her next stop was Peterson's diner. The place fell silent as she entered, but this time, Fiona wasn't intimidated. She walked straight to the counter where Peterson stood. Mr. Peterson, she said clearly, I want to know why you hate me enough to try to destroy my farm. Peterson's face reddened. I don't know what you're talking about. Someone set fire to my crops yesterday, someone who doesn't want me here. And you think it was me, he sputtered. I think it was someone who resents my presence in this town, someone who refused to serve me the day I arrived. The diner was deathly quiet now, every eye on them. I didn't set any fire, Peterson said, his voice low, and I don't hate you. I just don't approve of a woman living alone, taking up with a man like Blackwell. A man like Blackwell, Fiona repeated. You mean a hard-working, honest man who treats people with respect regardless of their gender or where they come from, a voice from behind her spoke up. Peterson's just sore because Blackwell turned down his daughter Sarah 3 years ago. Fiona turned to see an elderly man at a nearby table. She remembered him from the town meeting Jenkins from the general store. "Is that true?" she asked Peterson. The diner owner's face was purple now. "Get out of my establishment," he growled. Fiona stood her ground. "Not until you understand something. I'm not leaving Copper Springs. This is my home now. If anyone has a problem with that, they can come speak to me directly instead of setting fires like cowards." With that, she turned and walked out, her heart pounding but her head high. As she stepped onto the boardwalk, she nearly collided with a woman carrying a basket. "I'm sorry," Fiona said automatically. The woman, who appeared to be in her 30s, smiled hesitantly. "You're Miss James, aren't you? I'm Martha Williams. My husband helped fight your fire yesterday." "Thank you for that," Fiona said sincerely. Martha glanced around before speaking again. "I wanted to say, well, not all of us feel the way Peterson does. Some of us admire what you're doing." Fiona was touched. "That means a lot to me. If you need anything supplies, help with canning when harvest comes, you just let me know." Martha pressed a jar into Fiona's hands. "Wild honey from our bees." Before Fiona could thank her properly, Martha hurried away. Fiona looked down at the jar, a simple gift that represented so much more. She found Ethan waiting anxiously at the livery stable. "Are you all right?" he asked, searching her face. "I'm better than all right," she said, showing him the honey. "I think I might have made my first friend in town." On the ride home, she told him about her confrontations and about Martha's kindness. Ethan listened, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "You're a remarkable woman, Fiona James," he said when she finished. "But please don't scare me like that again," she laughed. "I can't promise that." "Apparently I have a habit of getting into trouble." He reached over and took her hand. "Then I'll just have to keep an eye on you, won't I?" The touch of his hand sent warmth spreading through her. "I would like that," she said softly. That evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset, Ethan seemed unusually quiet. Fiona waited, sensing he had something to say. Finally, he turned to her. "I've been thinking about what Peterson said about us taking up together." Fiona's heart skipped a beat. "Oh. People are talking about us, about how much time I spend here." He looked out at the horizon. "It could damage your reputation." "I don't care about my reputation," Fiona said firmly. "You should. It matters out here, especially for a woman alone." He paused. "Maybe I shouldn't come around so much." Fear gripped her at the thought of losing his presence in her life. "Is that what you want?" "No," he said quietly. "What I want." He took a deep breath. "What I want is to court you properly, Fiona, if you'd allow it." Joy bubbled up inside her. "I would like that very much, Ethan." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, a promise of things to come. As summer turned to fall, their courtship blossomed along with Fiona's farm. The remaining crops survived, providing a modest harvest. Ethan was there for every step, helping with the harvesting and preparation for winter. Their relationship became the talk of the town, but after Fiona's stand at the diner, the whispers were less malicious. Martha Williams became a true friend, introducing Fiona to other women who were willing to look past their initial prejudices. No one ever confessed to setting the fire, but no further incidents occurred. Whether it was Fiona's confrontation or the growing acceptance of her presence, the threat seemed to have passed. Winter brought new challenges. The first snow fell in November, earlier than usual, and Fiona found herself unprepared for the bitter cold that descended on her small cabin. Ethan arrived one morning to find her huddled by the fire, trying to keep warm. "This won't do," he said, immediately setting about sealing drafts and bringing in more firewood. That night, as another storm approached, Ethan made a decision. "I'm staying," he said firmly. "I'll sleep on the porch if necessary, but I won't leave you alone in this weather." "Don't be ridiculous," Fiona replied. "You're not sleeping on the porch in a blizzard. You can sleep by the fire." The next morning, Fiona awoke to find Ethan already up, cooking breakfast. The simple domesticity of the scene made her heart ache with longing. This is what she wanted: a partnership, a shared life. Ethan stayed for 3 days until the storm passed. When it came time for him to leave, they both felt the separation keenly. "I'll be back tomorrow," he promised, kissing her goodbye, but tomorrow brought more snow and Ethan didn't appear. Fiona tried not to worry, telling herself the trails were likely impassable, but as dusk fell with no sign of him, fear set in. She was just about to attempt the journey to his ranch when she heard hoofbeats. Relief flooded her as she ran outside, but it wasn't Ethan who approached, it was Martha Williams's husband, Thomas. "Miss James," he called, dismounting quickly. "Ethan sent me. His horse threw him on the way back to his ranch. He's hurt his leg pretty badly. Is he all right?" Fiona asked, panic rising. "Doc Sanders is with him, but he's asking for you. I've brought a wagon to take you there if you're willing." "Just let me get my coat," Fiona said, already turning back to the cabin. The journey to Ethan's ranch seemed endless. When they finally arrived, Fiona rushed inside to find Ethan lying in his bed, his face pale with pain. "Fiona," he said, his voice weak but his eyes lighting up at the sight of her. "You shouldn't have come in this weather." "Don't be ridiculous," she replied, moving to his side and taking his hand. "Of course I came. Doc Sanders explained that Ethan had a broken leg and several bruised ribs. He'll mend," the doctor assured her, "but he'll need looking after for a while. Can't put weight on that leg for at least 6 weeks. I'll stay with him," Fiona said immediately. Ethan protested, but Fiona was adamant. "You've been taking care of me for months. Now it's my turn." So began a new chapter in their relationship. Fiona moved temporarily into Ethan's ranch, caring for him as he healed. His home was larger than her cabin, well built and comfortably furnished. It spoke of years of careful work and planning. As she tended to Ethan and learned about his ranch, Fiona fell more deeply in love. She discovered his gentle way with animals, his extensive library of books, and his talent for carving beautiful wooden figures. Each revelation made him more dear to her. For Ethan, having Fiona in his home was both joy and torture. He loved watching her move around his kitchen, hearing her voice reading to him in the evenings, feeling her hands as she changed his bandages. But the propriety of the situation weighed on him. Despite his injury, he was acutely aware of her as a woman and of the impropriety of their living arrangement. "People will talk," he said one evening as she brought him tea. Fiona smiled. "People already talk, let them." "Your reputation is less important to me than your well-being," she interrupted. "Besides, Martha comes every day to help and half the town knows I'm here. It's hardly a scandal." As Christmas approached, Ethan's leg improved enough that he could move around with crutches. One evening, as they sat by the fire, he seemed nervous. "What is it?" Fiona asked. "Is your leg paining you?" "No, it's not that." He took a deep breath. "Fiona, these past weeks with you here, they've been the happiest of my life." Her heart quickened. "For me as well." "I had planned to do this differently," he continued, shifting awkwardly on his crutches as he reached into his pocket. "I had thought of taking you to that spot by the creek where the wildflowers grow in spring, or maybe after the Christmas service in town." From his pocket, he produced a small ring, a delicate silver band with a single pearl. "This was my mother's," he said softly. "Fiona James, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of joy filled Fiona's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Ethan Blackwell, I will marry you." The kiss they shared was full of promise and passion. When they finally parted, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Fiona, more than I thought possible." "And I love you," she replied. "You saw me when no one else did. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." They were married on New Year's Day, 1886, in the small church in Copper Springs. Martha Williams helped Fiona prepare, lending her a beautiful lace shawl that had been her mother's. To Fiona's surprise, many townsfolk attended, including Jenkins from the general store and even Mayor Thompson. As Ethan, now walking with only a slight limp, waited for her at the altar, Fiona thought back to that hot summer day when she had stood alone outside Peterson's diner. How different her life had become since then, how full of love and purpose. Their simple ceremony was followed by a celebration at Ethan's ranch, now their ranch. As they welcomed guests into their home, Fiona noticed Peterson hovering awkwardly at the edge of the gathering. "I'll be right back," she told Ethan, making her way to the diner owner. "Mr. Peterson," she greeted him, I'm surprised to see you here, he shifted uncomfortably. Didn't come empty-handed, he said gruffly, holding out a small package. Wedding present from me and the wife. Fiona accepted it with surprise. Thank you, Peterson cleared his throat. Wanted to say, well, seems I was wrong about you, about both of you, you've proven yourself. With that, he tipped his hat and retreated. When she opened the package later, Fiona found a beautiful hand-embroidered tablecloth with a note that read simply, "Welcome to Copper Springs." That night, as she lay in Ethan's arms in what was now their bedroom, Fiona felt a completeness she had never known. Happy? Ethan asked, stroking her hair. Completely, she replied. Though I do miss my farm. Ethan propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. I've been thinking about that. What if we kept both properties? Your land is good for crops and mine is better for cattle. Together we could build something substantial. A true partnership, Fiona said, smiling up at him. In everything, he agreed, kissing her softly. Spring brought new beginnings. Fiona's farm was transformed into productive fields of wheat and corn, while Ethan's cattle grazed on the rolling pastures of his ranch. They split their time between the two properties, working side by side. Fiona found her place in the community as well. Her friendship with Martha Williams led to connections with other women in town. Together, they started a small school for the children of surrounding farms, with Fiona teaching reading and arithmetic 3 days a week. Even Peterson mellowed. 1 year after she had been denied service, Fiona walked into the diner with Ethan and was greeted with a nod and a menu. It wasn't an apology, but it was acceptance. Summer came again, and with it, the anniversary of the fire. Fiona and Ethan rode out to the field that had burned, now lush with new growth. Amazing how things recover, Ethan remarked. With enough care and time, Fiona agreed, resting her hand on her slightly rounded belly. They had just learned they were expecting their first child, due in winter. Ethan placed his hand over hers, his eyes full of wonder. I never thought I could be this happy. Nor I, Fiona said. When I came west, I was looking for land, not love. And I was just looking for a meal when I pulled up that chair beside you, Ethan said with a smile. Funny how life works out. As they rode back to their home, Fiona thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a denied meal at a diner to a full life with a man who had seen her strength when others saw only her gender. The Wild West had challenged her, broken her down at times, but ultimately, it had given her everything she never knew she wanted. That evening, they sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Ethan's arm was around her shoulders, his hand occasionally drifting down to touch her growing belly. What shall we name him? Ethan asked. Or her? Fiona leaned into his embrace. If it's a boy, perhaps after your father, and if it's a girl, I was thinking Hope. Hope, Ethan repeated softly. I like that, because that's what you brought to this valley, Fiona. Hope and new life. She turned her face up to his for a kiss, thinking of how a simple act of kindness, a chair pulled up beside a stranger in need, had changed both their lives forever. The West might be wild, but in its untamed heart, they had found a love as enduring as the land itself. As the years passed, Fiona and Ethan Blackwell became fixtures in Copper Springs. Their farm and ranch prospered and their family grew. Hope, their firstborn daughter, was joined by a brother, Thomas, 2 years later, and eventually by a sister, Elizabeth. The town grew as well. The railroad arrived in 1890, bringing new opportunities and new faces. Fiona's small school expanded into a proper schoolhouse, where she continued to teach part-time while managing the farm with Ethan. Peterson's Diner, under new management after Harold retired, became a gathering place for the entire community, a place where everyone was welcome regardless of gender or background. Sometimes, when Fiona sat there with her family, she would remember that hot afternoon when she had stood outside alone and marvel at how far she had come. Through droughts and blizzards, good years and lean ones, Fiona and Ethan faced each challenge together. Their partnership, born from a simple act of kindness, and grown through shared struggles and joys, remained the foundation of their lives. And occasionally, When new settlers arrived in town, especially women traveling alone, they would find Ethan or Fiona pulling up a chair beside them, offering coffee and conversation, and perhaps the beginning of their own Western love story.